Funny,
Welcome.
what one of my favorite things about Fridays are?
Truck Tech. The only Alan Adler.
That's right. It seems like he was just here not too long ago. We just had a live event, a virtual event, but it was live because he was here in studio. And I'm excited because he's joining us this morning. Alan, thanks so much for being here.
Well, good morning, gentlemen. I cannot imagine how long it's been. A day?
It seems like it's been far too long, Alan. It always seems like it's always been far too long. I'm excited to get to chat with you this morning. We have a California Dreamin' Truck Tech edition. What's going on with that?
Yeah, but I got to get in my own way here for just a minute, because just a little while ago we posted our version of kind of the run-up or curtain raiser, if you will, to the Milton trial at Nikola. And just want to call attention to that because not a great day in court yesterday for Trevor Milton. A lot of his motions were turned away. A lot of things he didn't really want to see in the trial, and some things he wanted to get in, he wasn't able to. So we start with jury selection on Monday, and then probably opening arguments on Tuesday in New York. So we'll be following that and, filing not every day, I'm sure, but we'll be keeping up with it for federal fraud charges against the founder of Nikola Corporation. So there you go. Okay, you want to talk about California? Let's talk about Dreamin' in California. I looked up the lyrics to the Mamas and the Papas yesterday, and it really wasn't so far off. It wasn't good enough to use, but I can tell you that what we're talking about in this case is some rather interesting lack of regulation in California. This is a state that regulates everything, but it doesn't have any regulations covering autonomous trucking, commercialized autonomous trucking. California was among the first states back in 2012 to address the whole issue of autonomous vehicles, but they put a weight cap on it of 10,001 pounds, basically saying it's fine for cars. We understand what cars are doing. But in their defense, there really wasn't anything going on in the trucking space in 2012. That came later, but California has been really slow and quite honestly not done anything to catch up to what's happening in other states, allowing commercial testing of autonomous trucks and things like that. And the irony here, guys, is that California is the home to at least 4, I think it might be 5, autonomous truck companies.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I mean, you mentioned it right there, right? They're not almost being that proactive sell. I mean, when you think of California, you think of they're trying to get ahead of a lot of this stuff, and this is an area that they seem behind. I mean, what is California scared of in allowing some of this testing? I mean, like you said, there's 4 or 5 that are based of these autonomous trucking companies that are based there. I mean, are they scared of something, or is it just not something that they've been thought that needs to be talked about yet?
You know what it is? It's kind of a policy quirk. When you set a policy and you prohibit something, and this is what the Ariel Wolf at the Autonomous Vehicle Industry Association tells me. When you have something that's prohibited, it's very hard to get it overturned versus starting from scratch. So what the industry group is trying to do, and there has been a little bit of movement this year, I point out in the newsletter, but what the industry group wants to see is to get some level of rulemaking started, get some discussions going that can at minimum lift the cap on the rules that they already have. So like I say, when you think about cruise autonomous vehicles running around in San Francisco, and Waymo I think is beginning to test there again at the car level. The rules are already there. The thing that's in the way is this sort of, I guess you'd call it arbitrary, but this cap that prohibits a heavier vehicle. So I don't think they have to sort of start from scratch entirely. I think what the industry wants to see, and there was a letter written by all of these companies and stakeholders to Governor Gavin Newsom back in June saying, please, just take a look at this. Let's get a discussion going and let's move on. Now, in the last week of August, the state did come out with a framework, which as I read it, it's about 9 pages. And as I read it, it was sort of like a little something for everybody, very politically correct, very safe in terms of what it says, but it doesn't really push action. And I think what the industry group really wants to see now is let's get talking about how we get this cap lifted so that California, in this case, doesn't fall behind other states. I mean, you've got about 30 other states. That number varies depending how you look at it. That allow some level of testing of autonomous trucks, meaning they can run, obviously, at this point, they don't have to have a safety driver, but the vast majority of them do. And companies like Kodiak Robotics, as you remember, Kodiak was in the studio with us this week, but Kodiak Robotics is already running in 10 states, and they're trying to show that the long haul value of autonomous trucking, which is really where the savings come in, is something that can be done. But if you stop at the California border, that makes I-10 pretty useless.
Definitely does. It seems like it's certainly a missing piece. Alan, as we go through this article, there's a lot of great content here. Of course, shifting outside of the state of California, you also have a Too Simple story in there. Can you talk to us about that on some of the headline items?
Yeah, I was tempted. I was kind of stuck on Queen here, and it was either Hammer to Fall or another one bites the dust. In this case, Jim Mullen, who was their chief legal and administrative officer, is leaving the company. Jim is the last to go from the executive team, basically, prior to Xiao Hao, who is the co-founder of the company, taking over as CEO and chairman in March. Since that time, everyone on the executive team, and I'm sure there's an exception or two, has left the company. And in this case, Mullen went out of his way on his LinkedIn page essentially to say that this is not because of a lawsuit that's been filed over this crash that happened in April. This is when the truck was obeying an older command and it swerved left, and the driver tried to take control of it, but it crashed into a barrier, a median on I-10. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but that particular incident has sort of cast a negative light on some of the autonomous work. Also, a lot of criticism of Too Simple over its safety policies, and is it rushing too fast to get some things tested and so forth. Remember, Too Simple is the only company that is tested with no driver in the cab. In this case, there were a driver and an engineer in the cab. But this lawsuit, which, these come up immediately when anything happens anymore, so you'll have to judge it on its merits. But just 5 days after that crash in April, Mullen was given a $500,000 retaining bonus, for the months that he was there. He made over $9 million last year in cash and stock. So he's not leaving in a poor way financially, but it does, again, raise the question of, what's going on at Too Simple that nobody wants to work there except Xiao Hao at this point. And of course, they have brought in another person to take over that administrative and legal role. So I'm being somewhat facetious, but it does seem like an awful lot of people, your CEO, your CFO, your marketing team, all have left, and now your legal guy goes. So I guess we just have to wait and see. But, this was kind of a surprise this week.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a surprise, but I mean, at $9 million, that's nothing. I don't know if I'd be sticking around to watch the whole thing if I had $9 million kind of sitting there.
Alan, Tony's face lit up once you mentioned that number. I've never seen him smile so
yeah, well, guys, let's remember, it takes a lot more shares to get to 9 million now in Too Simple than it did when they went IPO. When they went public a year and a half ago, they priced in at $40. I didn't look this morning, but it's less than 10, right now. So it takes a lot more of those shares to get to 9 million. And again, most of that compensation, Tony, was in stock. It wasn't in cash. So, but it's a number that does stand out. I know Mullen reasonably well. I'm not, we're not close, but, we've met several times, and I think he's a stand-up guy. I'm not sure what the real reasons are. There's reasons we're never going to know as to why this occurred. But it does appear to be that the house cleaning at Too Simple is almost complete now.
Awesome. Well, Alan, thanks so much for joining us this morning. And before we let you go, which company in the industry do you think would make the best Netflix special?
Oh, Well, you know where I'm going there, right? I mean, right now, I don't think there is a better story than Nicola. I mean, the way this is playing out, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. I mean, today's story, we do draw a comparison to Theranos because a lot of the charges, a lot of the allegations, although in this case, no one was harmed, it was a marketing thing, but there are similarities, and others have pointed that out to me, and I think there is some comparisons. So if you've watched, I can't remember which streaming service has the story of Theranos. I've watched a couple of those episodes. So I think I'm pretty sure the Nicholas story would have to be hands down number one.
Alan, I think I have to agree with you. Thanks so much for being here this morning. And of course, we'll check in with you again next week.
Okay, thanks, guys.